Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala khayri khalqillah nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man wala. So alhamdulillah, we're going to just cover a few more of the etiquettes related to eating and drinking. These are not comprehensive. So last week we mentioned about 5 or 6 of the etiquettes, and there's actually many more. Some more important than others, some more emphasized in the Sharia than others. And so we're trying just to mention some of the ones that we can remind ourselves with. And tonight, inshallah, I just wanted to emphasize just a few, in addition to what we're going to mention, a few related to when we eat together that give some of those manners and etiquettes. In general, though, there's a few that I didn't mention last week. The first is, and these are again, some of them are generally accepted amongst most people. Washing your hands before and after eating. There is a hadith, although this authenticity is disputed, that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Min barakati al-ta'am al-wudu qabla al-ta'am wa ba'dahu." From the blessing of eating, or one of the ways to add blessing, is to make wudu before and after eating. Before and after eating. However, the wudu here that's being described is not the wudu of the salah. This is a different wudu that goes more back to the linguistic meaning of washing one's hand and rinsing one's mouth. Washing one hand and rinsing one's mouth. So generally, to wash one's hands before eating and after eating is something that is recommended and good to do. Of course, this is something that's commonly practiced now, but it's something that we have from our Sharia as well. Also, from the etiquettes is to not eat or drink while reclining or lying down. And this is considered to be from the makruhats, from the disliked actions. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Amma ana fala akulu muttaki'an." As for me, I do not eat lying down or reclining. Lying down or reclining. And so him, ﷺ, telling us this in this way indicates that it is not prohibited, but rather that it is disliked. And the scholars, they gave different reasons. Some of them relate back to health reasons, that when you eat in that way, it can affect the way that the food or the drink goes down. And then some gave more akhlaqi reasons. They said because the one who eats in this way, there's a level there of extravagance or opulence. The kings or the queens in the past. The image of them is them lying down and on their thrones or whatever and being fed or eating in that way. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he in another hadith he says, I eat like the slave eats. I eat and drink like the slave drinks and eats, meaning in a humble way. And so the Prophet ﷺ would refrain from eating or drinking, lying down or reclining. Okay, and so this is something that is from the etiquettes. On the other side of it, it's also not recommended. It's also makruh, but doesn't reach the level of haram as well. And this is what we said with most of these etiquettes. It's makruh to eat or drink while standing as well. Okay, and this is sometimes people get confused with this. It's not haram. It's not haram to eat or drink while standing, but it is not recommended. It is makruh. It is makruh. How do we know this? There's narrations that mention, specifically with drinking, the Prophet ﷺ prohibiting drinking standing. He prohibited drinking standing. But then you also have other narrations where he ﷺ and Ali ibn Abi Talib stood up and drank. Some said this is specific to Zamzam, but the more correct opinion, Allah knows best, is that anything, it's okay. But the Prophet ﷺ was showing us by eating or by drinking standing that it is allowed, but it's not recommended. It's not recommended. Okay, so that's from the etiquettes as well. Also from the etiquettes, and these are with some of them that it comes with eating together, is responding to an invitation for a meal. Not required, but it's good to. If someone invites you to eat, there's a hadith that mentions that إذا دعي أحدكم فليجب فإن كان صائما فليصلي وإن كان مفطرا فليطعم. That he says, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, if one of you is invited, i.e. to eat, then he should answer. If he is fasting, then at least he should make dua for the host. He can he can decline and say, I'm fasting, or that, I'm not able to make, and he makes dua for the host or the one who invited him. And if he is not, then he should answer and eat with them. Again, not obligatory, but it is recommended to accept the invitation of the one who invites you to eat. I don't think this is a hard thing for most of us. You get invited for a free meal, no problem, inshallah, you eat. Right? But it's actually from the etiquettes to accept the invitation for a meal. And if there's a reason that you're unable to, then you can decline. And these are why these etiquettes are not hard and fast rules. Sometimes a person is not able to. Sometimes there's other reasons that they need to decline. But generally, it's good to accept the invitation. Why? The next etiquette gives us maybe one of the reasons. Is because it is recommended also to eat together. It's recommended to eat together. This is a beautiful thing if you think about it, because eating together is one of the ways to build bonds with each other. And we know this, right? That those who we eat together with, there is that, an emotional connection that comes from that. And so there's a hadith in which one of the companions asked the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ya Rasulullah, na'kulu wa la nashba', like we eat but we don't feel full, we don't feel satisfied when we eat. And then the Messenger ﷺ, he says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَفَرَّقُونَ, he says, maybe that you eat separately, right? And this is unfortunately the reality in many of our homes now. Right? The food is made, but everyone is so busy that you just, everyone eats on their own time. You come and you take a plate and you go up, and maybe someone goes and watches TV, someone goes just upstairs to their room. And so the Prophet ﷺ says, maybe you're eating separately. And they said, yes, this is something that we do. And then he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, gather to eat together and mention the name of Allah over it, and then it will be blessed for you. Right? So eating together is something that is recommended. And especially, it's a way to gain barakah in the food. And sometimes we feel like, you eat with someone or you share your food with someone, it may not be enough. But the Prophet ﷺ tells us that, when you have barakah in your food, a little can satisfy a lot. طعام الواحد يكفي اثنين، طعام الاثنين يكفي ثلاثة. Right? Don't be afraid when you're sharing your food that it's not going to be enough. You may not get a miracle like, oh my God, the food is not going away, like what happened in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but maybe less will be more for you. This is what barakah is. Barakah is not that you have barakah in your wealth, so you open up your bank account and mashallah, you have a deposit of $1,000. It would be nice, but that's not going to happen most likely. But barakah is that what you have has blessing in it, that it's enough for you, right? And that it extends. So a little bit goes a long way. It's the same thing with food here. And so to eat together, to respond to an invitation, part of the etiquettes though is that if you are invited, you do not bring a guest without permission. You do not bring a guest without permission. And this doesn't really maybe happen that much, but this is something if the host invites you and maybe someone is there with you. This happened in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. He was invited and there was someone who was with him who was asking him and talking to him. And when he got to the house of who he was invited to, he was welcomed in, and he said that I have this person with me. Either, you can allow them to come in and join. And look at the humility of the Prophet ﷺ, right? He's not saying, well, this is with me, he's coming in. It's your house. Right, you invited me and you invited these people. He wasn't part of the invitation. Either you allow him to come, or no problem, he won't come. And so they invited him as well. But this is what the Prophet ﷺ is showing us, not bringing guests without permission. If you're invited, or if you're a host and you're inviting people, and this is something, alhamdulillah, that our hosts do, generally we hope, is that you start by serving the guest. Okay? This is part of the etiquette of hosting, is that you serve the guest first, and then you are the last one. If you're eating together, you're eating together. But the Prophet ﷺ said, "Saqi al-qawm akhiruhum shurba," that the one who gives, is serving others, is the last one to drink. And so generally, if you're serving others in your home, then you start with them, and then you eat after, or you eat with them, and the guest should eat right away. Right? The guest should eat right away, and this is from the etiquettes of being a good guest. And then part of the etiquettes of being a good guest, but also in general, is that you do not criticize the food. The Prophet ﷺ never criticized any food. Something that, we can learn from, definitely. If he didn't like it, he didn't eat it. And this also shows us that not everyone is going to like every type of food. Okay? You may not be used to a type of food. It may not be from what you're accustomed to in your own culture. And this is exactly what happened with the Prophet ﷺ when he was served dab, lizard, right? Most likely none of us would eat it. And this is exactly what he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, it's not from the food of my people. And so he didn't touch it. He didn't eat from it. And that's not considered no problem. But he would never criticize the food if he didn't like what was being served. And if it's something that's good, then it's praised. And this is part of being grateful. And then also to make dua for the one who hosts you. Someone invites you over. When you eat, you shouldn't overstay. And this is more about being a guest, but from when you eat with them or they feed you, make sure that you make dua for them. And there's some ad'iyah that are mentioned. أفطر عندكم الصائمون وأكل طعامكم الأبرار وصلت عليكم الملائكة. These are from the du'as that are mentioned to make for the host. So those are some that relate to being a guest or having guests. And then just a few relating to drinking, that you should drink sitting down when you're able to, right? It's recommended to drink sitting down. And then you shouldn't breathe into the thing that you're drinking, into the cup. And this also relates to food, that it's better not to blow or to breathe into what you're eating or you're drinking. There's exceptions here, and they made the exception if you're eating, like you have soup, for example, and it's really hot. It's better to let it cool on its own. But if it's your own cup, right, it's not a communal cup. If it's a communal cup, don't breathe in it at all, please. Okay, then you're going to ruin it for everybody. But if it's something where you're eating by yourself and it's very hot, and the only way that you can allow it to cool down is to breathe in it, then to blow in it, then this is okay. But it's recommended not to. It's recommended to allow it to cool, and then once it cools down enough, then you can eat. And you should avoid like slurping and making loud noises, and you should avoid burping loudly as well. This is when you're eating. This is something if you think about it, you shouldn't be burping loudly when you're eating. What about in the masjid and during salah? That should be avoided as much as possible. And then the Prophet ﷺ, when he would drink in 3 sips, and then he would breathe, alayhi salatu wasalam. And again, generally, why? Because you're a lot of times sharing, in those times you're sharing the inat, or you're sharing the vessel that you're drinking from. And so he would, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I don't have a cup with me, but he would drink, he would put the cup to his mouth and drink 3 sips, and then he would put it away, alayhi salatu wasalam. And he wouldn't breathe inside. He wouldn't breathe inside the inat. So these are just some of the etiquettes related to food and drink. Inshallah, next week we'll cover another one. Any questions about what we've covered? Yes, it's a certain type of lizard. Yes, it's fine. Do you want to eat it? I don't know where you can find that. Sure. Good question. So if you're not eating with your hands, then I would say you can still wash them, still good, because you may still, touch the food like bread or something like that, but it's not necessary. But also, because part of it is rinsing the hands and the mouth, so before and after you can do that as well. Yes. Assalamu alaikum. So is it sunnah to drink Zamzam standing up? Yes, you can say it's good to drink it standing up because the Prophet ﷺ drank it standing up. But is it sunnah in and of itself to drink it standing? Allahu a'lam. I don't think that necessarily there's any extra virtue of drinking it standing up other than the fact that the Prophet ﷺ did it. And some said he did it in this way to show that it's allowed. But you would say, I guess, the general rule is that it's better to drink sitting. It's better to drink sitting. Allahu a'lam. It's a good question. Any other questions? So who's going to host us now so we can apply all these rules? Inshallah. We have, alhamdulillah, the brothers always provide for us after, so you can, inshallah, apply some of these. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.